Welcome, everyone. This is Denver Urban Gardens. This is our May webinar of activities with young children in honor of Mother's Day. Yay, let's hear it for mamas.
Hey.
So we're a small but mighty crowd today. And I'm just glad that you spent some of your time with us. I'm going to introduce Jungle Judy. Judy, you want to say hello to everybody?
Sure, I noticed that you put the jungle this time in green.
Yes, yes.
Yes, in honor of the Earth Awakening. So I'm Jungle Judy, and I work with Rob, and my love is working with kids and getting their hands in the soil.
That's Judy in a nutshell, I'll say.
There you go. It's getting my hands in the soil and the flowers.
And what else do you need? Yes, and Judy is making me a convert. I got dirty nails from the dirt more in these past 2 years than I've ever had in my entire life. And Judy and I, everyone, when I see Judy, I'm like, Judy, you've got leaves in your hair. And she's like, yeah,
yeah, whatever it is.
So, Mary, welcome. We have a small group with us, but we're really excited to share these activities. We got a lot, actually. So let's just jump in.
Let's jump in.
And talk about nurturing, which is a good topic for Mother's Day. Judy, you want to start us off thinking about nurturing?
I love this quote. And Rob pulled up this quote. And obviously it says, nurturing a feeling makes it proliferate. Choose wisely. Joy, kindness, love, and caring will illuminate your life. So I think this is really important when we're talking about gardening, because when we're talking about gardening, we're talking about finding that special place of peace and joy. And I like with my grandchildren, I never approach it like a task. We have to do this, we have to produce this, but let's create an area that just radiates joy and sunshine where you just want to be. Because the more we care and the more we shine our light, the more the earth shines back on us.
Well said, Judy. And I want to welcome Rosa and Miss Amelia from Valdez. So people are trickling in.
Yes, you and Rosa again, of course.
Yeah, always nice to have you, Rosa.
We have our devoted crew. So if we're going on from that feeling of nurturing, we just can't forget about the earth. Because really, the earth celebrates the more that we are there, and the more that we work with her, and the more that we not try and do a project or get out some goal, but the more we allow her to show us what's supposed to come, the more that she just celebrates. And she celebrates by putting out all these wonderful things like flowers and vegetables that we can actually eat, in addition to the insects eating them. So she breathes in that energy of joy that we have, and she celebrates in us giving her healthy soil and produces these wonderful things that encourage us to stay and wonder.
It's magical, isn't it, Judy? It's just magic. Yeah. So we have some other people that have joined us, Nune and Jen.
Oh,
we've got our ECE cohort here.
I love it.
This is just, it's a nice time to just reflect. We have been working with 12 teachers in Denver Public Schools and just having a marvelous time going into their schools. This is Laura on our staff, who's been working really hard to get vermicomposting classes in the kids' classrooms and learning about worms, and the teachers have done a great job of just getting them excited about it. And now we're at that phase where, okay, let's do some gardening. So it's exciting. And we use this framework that we've talked about before. I thought I'd bring it back. I observe, I wonder, and I learn. It's such an ideal framework to just bear in mind when you're working with kids, and just taking the time to stop and have them do those things, to observe, to wonder, and then to reflect on what they're finding out about the world. And you can really easily do this by just asking more questions. Instead of explaining things or describing things to kids, give them the opportunity to observe for themselves. And from those observations, what do they start to notice? What are they curious about? This is an ideal time for this to happen because spring has sprung. Judy, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And Rob and I were just looking at these slides a little bit earlier, and this is, a small tomato plant. But I think it's a great way of introducing small children who very often get looked over for what can they do. One of the things that small children can do is really get down and observe small plants like these tomato plants that are germinating. And when they get down, because they're pretty much the size of the plant, they've got the opportunity to observe the hairs on the stem and wonder about those, to look underneath the leaves and see if any insects have laid eggs, to notice why some branches are growing up or some are growing out, and maybe even to observe some of the initial spots that might occur if there are some insects producing diseases on the leaves. So kids are your observational factory. They look at everything. From that vantage point of being close to the soil, they can really be your eyes on what's happening. So utilize them.
Yeah. And one of the things you can do, I mean, there's that tendency, that a human nature tendency, like just to, like, if you see these leaves and just grab them and rip them, so you may need to, how do we actually look at these things? Well, do we use one finger to touch them? And do we just lift very gently to see, if we want to take something, let's make sure there's a whole bunch of those things. And because if they're taking one flower or one vegetable, one tomato, we don't want to take something that is only one thing in the garden. We want to just take things that are common in the garden, and allow those things that are very special or unique to grow. So setting up some ground rules of, well, how do we actually observe these things, and to take the time to just talk about it. Here's some activities that we have here. We've got a lot of activities for you today. A scrap garden is a really simple way of learning how things grow. And what we mean by a scrap garden is just that, taking the ends of things that you then stick in water, and you make some observations and see if something's going to grow. Here we have some lettuce, and they've just, chopped off the bottom end of it. You stick this in the water, and there you go. A carrot top. Remember, a carrot is a root, and the leaves will grow up from the top. So if you just take the top of a carrot and stick it in water, eventually that, the stem and the leaves will start to grow. There's all kinds of different scraps that you can use. Onions, the bottom of onions, when you see those little strands, those are the roots. What else, Judy? What have I forgotten?
So you can take some green onions.
Green onions, yeah.
Green onions, put it in a little water. You can actually take the bottom of a cauliflower or a cabbage and stick it in some water.
Yeah, that surprised me. I didn't think that would go. Yeah.
The bottom of a beet again. And what is often fun is to take a baking pan instead of a jar and to kind of make a collage. You can arrange the lettuce and the cabbage and the carrot and the beets and different shapes, different colors. You can keep them upright by just putting some pebbles in the bottom and filling above the pebbles with some water, so the tops don't fall over. And then you have this whole beautiful artwork that you can decorate a table with until it's time to go in the compost pile.
Yeah, and a day could go by, and then it's like, okay, let's go look and see what's been growing.
Yeah.
What changes did we find? And maybe even take a picture or something like that. So that scrap gardens are really, that's an easy thing to do. Seed tapes is another fun one. We've actually done this activity, but it's worth mentioning again. Judy, you want to talk about this one?
So seed tapes are a way, especially for little fingers, of arranging seeds on newspaper so you're actually pre-spacing them. So if you're doing this with your kiddos, this works really well with seeds like beets or lettuce or carrot seeds. So what you want to do is just tear a strip of newspaper the long way, about a 1-inch strip, and you can make it any length you want. Lay that strip of newspaper out flat on the table, And then you're just making, and again, like this says, you don't want to use the colored pages, especially like the shiny ads, like Target ad pages or something like that, because that ink could have chemicals that would not do well with the seed germinating. So just black and white newspaper, 1-inch strips, and then you're going to make a homemade paste, similar to what you would do if you were making a gravy for turkey or beef stroganoff or something like that. You just mix, I never even measure a half a cup, just a couple tablespoons of water, and a couple tablespoons of flour, maybe a third of a cup of water or a quarter of a cup of water. Mix it up slowly, and the kids love to mix this up slowly. We're just using a measuring stick or a toothpick or a marking stick, whatever it takes, a wooden stick, a dowel. Mix it up until it looks fairly smooth. And then you're just making blobs. You can see Zia, our little scientist down there, Lauda's daughter, is just making blobs. You can use a paintbrush. You can use a toothpick. Stick it in your flour and water, and you can see you can pre-space. Once every 3 inch, if you're doing beets, you put a blob. Once every 3 inch for carrots, for lettuce is 3 inches apart, spinach 6 inches apart. And while that blob of flour and water then is, before it turns hard, you pick up 2 seeds of carrots or 2 of lettuce or 2 of onions, whatever it is that you want to pre-space, and stick it on that blob. And then you have to wait until the flour and water, of course, is going to dry. So leave it flat out. And at that point, I would store it in a paper bag until you're ready to plant it. And then when you're ready to plant it, you can actually cut those strips so that you're planting small amounts of those seeds at 2-week intervals. So for instance, you say, well, my family would like 6 salads a week. Then you cut a small amount. Maybe you're going to cut enough for 12 seeds. And then when those 12 seeds come up, you're going to thin them to the strongest 6 seedlings. So you're pre-spacing the seeds. Now, when you plant them, what this doesn't show, I want you to plant that whole strip of newspaper about a 1/2 inch under the surface. So you unroll it. You have your furrow, which is a little row dug in with some compost enriched planting mix in the soil. And then you just lay that strip a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch down in the soil, and you cover it over with soil, and you put a label in so you know what you planted. I got a strip of carrots, and you put the date that you planted it. So it's a wonderful way of pre-spacing seeds and getting the little ones involved in the whole process of planting. So I love this project. It works really well.
And a lot of these seeds are really small, and part of the intention is, because they need to be spaced out, it's hard because they're so little.
It's hard because
and and so we just, we don't want blobs of seeds to go and my carrots last summer, oh, they were crowded.
When they get crowded, did they come up with some interesting shapes?
Oh, very interesting shape, very colorful.
Oh, yeah.
Colorful shapes. So we want more room for them to grow in. So this is a good way of helping that out. So,
and we don't always get 2 seeds on one blob, but we try.
Yeah, that's right.
Another activity that I love, and this works really well with groups of kids because you can get them to work together collaboratively, is to get down to the bottom of a weed after that soil is nice and moist. Like on a day like today, if you had weeds that you needed to pull, rather than pulling up at the top, have maybe 3 or 4 kids working together around the base, around the soil, and say, I want to see who can work together, which 3 or 4 kids can work together and pull out that whole root. I don't want to see it break. And it works really well. I've done this project for kids that have maybe had a little challenge working together. And what seems to happen is they just slow each other down because I say, no, we don't want to go too fast. We don't want that root to break. Let's go slowly. And they actually, I've had them tell their partner, you're going too fast. It's breaking. Slow down. Let's work together. Don't do everything yourself. So it's a great collaborative project. And you can extend that then by drawing and seeing what's underground. So for instance, some plants like dandelions have got taproots that look like carrots. Some have got fibrous roots, some of the early spring grasses, that looks like the hair of your head. And then have the kids take a pencil or something and draw what those roots look like so you can extend it. It's a fabulous project.
Yeah, there's nothing satisfying than pulling a weed from the very
bottom. And then of course that leaves areas for planting, and that takes us right into, I think, going along with our whole feeling of nurturing and everybody belongs in gardening. This is a book that I've used for my grandchildren, for preschoolers, for even younger. I've used this with adults. I've used this with special need populations. I adore this book. And before we go on to the pages, it's basically the story of a little boy. I mean, he's very small and he loves his garden, but he feels he's too little to do anything and he doesn't have any skills. Just like many of your students or kids might feel, what can I do for a garden? But what he can be there is just sit in the garden and notice the changes. So he actually ends up falling asleep. He works really hard. But before he falls asleep, he puts out the thought of this garden really needs help. And that positive energy that we started this webinar with goes out and the garden gets taken care of. So again, the overall view is everybody is a gardener and a garden needs everybody to take care of it. So let's see what's on the next page, Rob. It's absolutely beautiful. This was the garden.
Oops, sorry.
Let's go back. And I love to do this with kids because it shows textures. As it goes on, it'll show the different flowers. It shows different colors. Sometimes it will show worms or different insects. So it's a great picture of what goes on above soil and below soil. So this was the garden. It didn't look like much.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, here's the gardener right there.
He's the gardener, the little gardener, and that's actually right next to him is his
house. Yeah, his little
house.
Yeah.
So he's really little.
He's little. The title is very accurate. Okay, so let's go on to the next.
Now, it didn't look like much, but it meant everything to its gardener. And before we go on, this is a really important thing because sometimes the things that we think are important in a garden, our children don't think are important. They really notice things that change day by day. And very often we don't have that same perspective. We're so much into what can we get out, whereas children are into the changes and a leaf that's growing or a worm that wasn't there or a beetle. So this little guy is noticing things. This place that didn't look like much, this means everything to him. Oh, and he thought he wasn't very much good at gardening. And again, you can notice the worms. You can notice, and there's a can on the next page. So he's working. It wasn't that he didn't work hard. So again, I would encourage you to think about gardening, not so much, what can I get out of it? But what do I notice all around? And it's not the end result. It's the learning that goes along the way that produces that wonderful feeling of you make a difference, you matter, you belong here. But at this point, he thinks, I'm not much good at gardening. It wasn't that he didn't work hard. He was just too little. And you can even see the worms are sad. And you're thinking, oh, he's trying so hard and he's not making a difference. So it's really important that we encourage every step along the way. No one heard his little voice, but someone saw his flower. So he falls asleep for a long time, for more than a day, for more than a week. And when he finally awoke, it had been just long enough for something to change. Actually, it looks like a whole bunch of things have changed. And I bet that's because he went to sleep with a feeling of I really can't do anything, but he did know he could do something. And that positive thought went out and people stepped in to help. And do we have another slide about this?
That's it. So,
okay, so again, this is a super important lesson about slow down, notice those changes. Notice that a garden not only takes that one little gardener on the left, but it takes the worms, it takes the bugs, it takes the butterflies. It takes just time to create a special place to sit in that garden patch and notice and validate those changes.
Yeah, great book, great book. Thanks, Judy. Anything else you want to say about that before we move on?
It's very special for everybody, not just for kids.
Yeah. So here's another book. This is for, those of you that just want some ideas or projects that you can do with kids. This is from our friends at Life Lab over in California. I had the pleasure of going out to Life Lab and visiting their sites, and they actually are now going back to live teacher workshops this summer. I won't, unfortunately, I won't be able to go, but they're just great there. Whitney and John are really great educators, so dedicated to getting kids out into the gardens. And I just took a picture of the table of contents just to give you a sense of what's in the book. There's metric conversions. Ooh. But we have, over here, we've got, let me annotate this a little bit. We've got digging in with kids, just getting them jumping in, designing friendly gardens. So even, designing ideas, making gardens fun for kids. How do you engage kids, like we've been talking about with that framework of wonder and observation? Here's some particular ways you can theme a garden. A pizza garden is a great way to get kids interested in it, so that you can take all the ingredients of a pizza and grow them. Art projects here, and so on. So it's a really great book, and we are going to give away one of them in our fabulous drawing of prizes. So we actually have a bunch of books this time around. We were going to be very generous, and since we have a smaller audience, you might win. We
can't decide which one we like best, too.
Right? I know, it's all good. And, we know Rose is going to win again, because Rosa wins all the time.
Oh, no. I can't say, oh, no.
Yes, I need another book, please.
Yeah, you're for want of a book. That's right, Rosa. No, we're happy to give it. You just got the lucky touch. Here's another activity. Simple. Who doesn't like to have the handprints of the small hands of your, oops. I was showing that, I ripped off my earbuds here. I hope you can still hear me. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me okay? All right. I'm assuming you can hear me. Anyways, yeah, so just a simple way of making handprints. I don't think I need to say anymore. It's pretty obvious how this is done. So, okay, thanks, Paula. You can hear me. Petal Art. Judy, you want to talk about this one?
Oh my goodness, this is like one of the other activities that we've done in the past, which is earth art. And it's just basically taking found objects. See, we're not, you can collect leaves, you can collect sticks. The kids can make a flower, and then they can pull off different petals. They can add other things. I mean, you could bring out dry beans too that you might have in the house, and they could put it on. So basically, this is a way of kids, you can see on the right-hand side, they've actually drawn a flower, a stem, and leaves, and then somebody has pulled off a bunch of petals, whether it's from daisies or whatever. You can make it colorful as you like. Up on top, we're using some of the flowers of the season, the dandelion petals, almost look like the shape of a heart. So you can make this many dimensional. I would encourage you, if you're doing, you could even plant this flower by getting then, just if you're doing it outside, get a place in the soil where you would actually plant that. So you could make a whole flower garden of different shapes. Mm-hmm. So this is textures, this is colors. It's a great way of introducing, and you can do this activity through the season. So You can even say, I wonder what type of petals we can use in the summer. Are those the same things that we would find in the spring? And the colors are going to change in the fall as the leaves turn. So this is a great way of teaching seasons. And then when the leaves fall down from the tree, just going through the whole seasonal change and talking about that. So you could even do things like, if you wanted to be really creative, incorporate little things like cherry tomatoes as the season goes on and put those on. So great way of using found objects from the garden to stimulate kids' imagination and also kind of fine tune their sense of, I see this around me, and encourage them to pull apart petals, and find the different parts of plants. So I love this activity.
Yeah. And again, this might be an opportunity, like, thinking about which ones we pick. We don't want to pick ones that are just about to grow or ones that are just one of a kind. We want to keep those in the garden, but ones that we see a lot of, yeah, we can grab a bunch of those for our art piece there.
So for instance, why don't you go back just a moment?
Oh, okay.
To that picture. I'm thinking that, one of the common flowers in the summer that you see a lot of in gardens are marigolds and zinnias.
Yeah,
and
right.
Those are ones where you could start the process
many petals,
by maybe cutting a flower, or even bachelor buttons at this time of the year. So maybe you want to begin the project by providing a whole array of flowers for kids to work with, and then demonstrate how to carefully pull out petals, and then they can do the decoration and the creating of the art project.
Yeah. And speaking of flowers and pollinators, here are some suggestions of plants, trees, shrubs, and flowers that, especially in Denver, in the Denver region, if you're looking for pollinators in your garden, what kinds of plants would you have? So I invite you in the chat to type in your favorite ones. You don't necessarily have to grow them. What are your favorite flowers? What are your favorite flowering trees? Type in the chat which ones are your favorites. And I'll hand this over to Judy. As while you're doing that, any comments you have in terms of in the care of these types of plants?
Well, one of the things that I'm noticing is that the selection that you put down is early season and mid-season. There are also late season flowers. So if we want to attract pollinating, and we have a slide later on that talks about different things that pollinate the plants. If we want to invite insects and birds into our garden that are going to pollinate, they're going to produce food for us, or they're going to create, we're providing places for their young to land. And then in return, the young are going to eat a lot of bad insects. So you always want to provide a bunch of flowers or trees or shrubs that flower at different time of the year, so that you're providing kind of a high level mixed banquet, if you will, so that you can remember, unless those insects are visiting those trees or visiting the shrubs or the perennial flowers or your food crops, you're not going to get food. Without bees visiting your apples or your cherries or anything like that, you're not going to get that fruit that we love to eat. You're not going to get those tomatoes. So you always want to provide a mixed banquet and keep the pesticides away. So don't spray chemicals if you want your plants pollinated throughout the season.
Thanks, Judy. And we've got people chiming in the chat, their favorite pollinating plants. Miss Amelia likes sunflowers.
Oh yeah.
Nune, fruit trees and marigolds. Karen talks about honey locust and how the flowers have a wonderful scent, and they do, they really do. Lavender, who doesn't like lavender? Rosa likes marigolds. Thank you, Paula, for chiming in on lavender. I'm on the lavender train there. Penstemons are beautiful. I love penstemons.
They come in many colors.
Yeah, they come in
many
colors.
Thinking,
yeah.
Who can tell me, I'm not going to put it, but who can tell me the name of the shrub, which is blooming right now? It is purple in color, and it is so fragrant, and it is very late blooming this year. It usually blooms almost a month earlier. And when it blooms, it perfumes the whole neighborhood. It has 5 letters in it. That's enough hint.
I don't know. You've stumped me.
Oh my goodness.
I was all ready for forsythia, but when you said it was purple,
It is not.
oh, lilac. Oh, my
Of
sister
course,
got it. Of course. Yeah. I was thinking too hard. All right. Jen got it too. Although she wrote
But the
lilac.
lilacs are late.
I know what you meant, Jen. Very good. Well done. Well, you get an extra bonus point for that. Yeah, our lilac bush, it's always sleepy. It's always sleepy. So
Yeah.
so here's a poll. I'm gonna launch the poll here. What percentage of flowering plants depend on pollinating animals? And we're talking pollinating animals, you know what we're talking about. We're talking about bees, bumblebees, certain flies, ants even are pollinators. So type in the chat here. These are savvy test takers. They know to hedge their bet.
They know the answer.
They're like, oh, it can't be 25. That's too low. That's too low. So nobody is voting for that. All right. I'm going to close the poll. If you give you just a little bit more time. Oh, people are chiming in. I'll give
Okay.
So what percentage is it? 25, 50, or 75%? Let's end the poll. And I'll share the results, and drum roll, we'll see what the answer is. The answer is 75%. 75%, half of you had said 75%. Well played. You knew it was on the higher end, because why would I be asking that? Because it's pretty, it's amazing how many, how much is dependent on pollinators. I got this statistic from USDA. Some scientists estimate that 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of animal pollinators, that those foods would not, we get those foods as a result of animal pollination. So it's important. It's important. All righty. So here we have some celebrity pollinators. So if I had some cheesy music, I'd play it. We have ants over here, and butterflies, wasps. What I invite you to do is, if you are able to, you have the ability to annotate on the screen. And so what you need to do is go on the panel that is, and I want to make sure that you're able to annotate. Yeah, you're able to annotate. There's a button that's got a little pencil, and you can annotate by looking for the stamp tool. If if you can't find this, no worries. But if you're able to, you can select a stamp. Like I'm going to select a stamp here, and I'm going to put it on the wasp here. So I have, just so you know what these are. Oops, I'm giving more stars here.
Do we need to tell them what they are, or
yeah, I'm going to tell you what they are. I just need to move the screen a little bit. We've got, let me annotate this here. So we've got hummingbirds and mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have bumblebees, and then regular bees. And let me admit Mary back in. Ants, of course, butterflies and wasps. And I can't see this one because my screen is, I can't move.
I can tell you what that is.
What is that? Oh, I know what is it there, Judy?
It's actually a hoverfly.
Yeah, it's a hoverfly. Yeah.
Sometimes called a flower fly.
Yeah. Now, if you're not able to, I just was trying this out for fun. What else could I do to make it more interactive? So if you can't find your annotate tool, no, don't despair. Don't despair. Don't have annotation despair. You can just type it in the chat. So let me clear my drawings out there and allow you to tell us what's your favorite pollinator there. So I'll give you a chance to type in the chat. Oh, yeah, Rosa says butterflies. Jen is putting a heart by the hummingbirds. Karen says hummingbirds. Oh, we've got a bumblebee fan. Okay, very nice. Yes, yes. But the point is that there are a lot of pollinators out there, ones that you might not even think about. Oh, Dolores says hummingbirds. Yeah, we're trying to get our hummingbird feeder out. I actually was going to put a recipe for hummingbird feeders, a healthy recipe, but we had so many things that we're doing today. I thought, well, I got to cut this out. Let's cut this down.
One of the things, Rob, that I will tell people is that my kids, Tony and Teresa, and my grandkids live in Centennial, and I share a bunch of zinnias with them. The hummingbirds are crazy at the zinnias.
At zinnias? Oh.
At the zinnias, yes. And the zinnias don't usually have that type of tubular flower that hummingbirds love, but I noticed them going specifically to the zinnias last year.
Very nice.
So you might want to try it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they like those trumpet vines. I love those trumpet vines.
They love trumpet vines.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great when they start to come, when they bloom. All righty. Well, thank you for playing the pollinator game for what it's worth. This is a great book, Butterfly Park. We've been talking about pollinators. This is by Ellie McKay. She has this amazing way of using paper art and using colored pieces of paper and lighting. And she uses them in sort of a diorama way of capturing images. So this is a story of a girl who has moved into the city, and this is her house right over here. And lo and behold, she notices this park with this big fence gate that says Butterfly Park in there. And so she thinks, okay, great. I'm going to explore this park and I'm going to see all the butterflies. Well, she goes in and there's no butterflies. And she kind of wanders around. Then finally she sees one, but of course it flies away. So she was trying to figure out, well, okay, if this is Butterfly Park, how can I, Rosa wants to win this book. Okay. How can we make it so Rosa wins? This is the game now. So they try all these different ways of figuring out how to get a butterfly in there. And there's a number of them. You can see how beautiful this is. This is all paper that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Well, a bunch of the kids in the neighborhood, they take it on as their mission to help her to figure out where the butterflies are. And they start to follow where the butterflies are going, and they see that the butterflies like flowers. So she says, oh, okay, well then I'll just cut some flowers and I'll stand in the park and I'll wait for them to come. Well, of course, they don't really, that's not how it works, right? So what she realizes then was not so much that flowers themselves, but that they have to plant them in gardens. So one of the days, as she was waiting, all of her neighbors came in and they brought all their shovels and dirt. And as you can see, they showed her that plants need roots to grow. Together, everyone planted until the park was brimming with flowers and laughter. And then, of course, butterflies start to come as well. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. One that you could, just keep for a long time. And she has other books too, in the same sort of style. So Judy, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's just a really good lesson about following nature instead of coming with a pre-planned way of how things work.
Well, and it's that sort of investigative way. She's like, oh, well, then if they need this, then that's what we'll do. And then she finds out, oh, that's not it. I need to do more figuring out. And she figures it out. And eventually they build a garden for the butterflies to come. This is a really simple recipe. Paula, are you still there? Do you want to talk about this one? I took this from the Educational Carrot. Do you want to talk about it? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Here she comes.
So you can make salsa verde. So salsa verde is an Italian sauce that is made really with any greens that you have around. They use a lot of parsley there, not cilantro. They Italians don't really like cilantro, but this is a variation of it. And now with the spring, a lot of pea shoots are coming into. So if you go to farmers markets, you will see pea shoots showing up, and sometimes we don't know what to do with those. So a great way to use them is to just put them all in a blender or a food processor, literally to just put all the ingredients in the food processor and pulse until it becomes a sauce. And they can go delicious on any kind of meats, or even with white beans. It's really yummy. I like it on bread with, roasted veggies. It's just very simple and a great way to start the spring, because it has that vibrancy of, a new life into spring.
Yeah. Yeah. You roasted some radishes recently, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in my little potted garden, I had planted breakfast radishes and they already came out. So I roasted some of them, and then I took that's another variation. I took the radish tops because they were so tender. And instead of the pea shoots, I used the radish tops. So this is just, a little framework in which you say, I have a cup of different herbs and greens, put them in a blender or a food processor, and add the other ingredients, and voila, you have sauce.
There it is. Yeah, and it's a nice way of talking about, the different parts of the plants that we eat. And sometimes it's like, you eat the shoots? We don't eat those. Yes, you can. You can, absolutely. Carrot shoots. Oh,
carrot tops. This one would be also really delicious with carrot tops.
Yeah.
So using all those different plants of parts of the plant, it just makes it really a great way to also, avoid food waste, but also just find new and exciting recipes.
Yeah. I love how Paula is widening my palette. One webinar at a time. I've been trying all these recipes, so this is definitely one I'm going to try out. And we mentioned the educational carrot. Do you want to talk a little bit of what that is? And we'll figure out a way to get people to sign up, but we're not there yet. But go ahead.
Yes. So back, before the pandemic, the educational group had the educational carrots. So Judy was one of the leading people with it. So what we're doing now is just bringing it back and having resources for everyone to feel, go back into the garden with kids. So this is very heavy on kid activities and resources for parents. So you can share this with with the parents in your life, yourself, but other parents and anyone who might want to start feeling more at ease and more just excited about going in the garden with their children. So thanks to all of the different resources that Doug has in store, it's just a matter of putting them together and finding more resources out there. So there'll be a lot of fun things coming up this summer. Stay tuned. And if you have signed up, if you've come to this webinars, which a lot of you have come, you might have already received it because I took the liberty of adding you to
Well done. Well done. Yeah, it's I'm really excited about this, and we send it out monthly. And if you do want to sign up, we'll figure out a way. We haven't got the system in place yet, but you can certainly email me if you want to be added to the list if you're not already. So thanks, Paula. I put you on the spot, but
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Rosa, you want to be added? Sure, I'll do that. Yeah. Okay, here's another activity. Judy.
So this is a wonderful way of seeing weeds as resources. And again, weeds you can use right now. We've got bindweed coming up like crazy. Bindweed has creeping underground stems. What I love to do is make braids. I'll actually braid 3 long stems of bindweed. And depending upon the length that it is, it could be a crown, it could be a bracelet, it could even be a belt. And then I will insert different flowers and herbs that are coming up. So you can see right at this time of the year, you can cut some dandelions and put it in. Those little white flowers are chamomile. How beautiful, and what a way of teaching children the different uses, the different purposes of plants in our garden. A weed is really just a plant which is growing in a place where we don't want it to grow. But many of them, like dandelions, have got a lot of wonderful medicine in their roots. They're one of the earliest spring pollinators for bees. I was introduced years ago to a cup of dandelion wine. I remember that, and I still remember the flavor of that. But it's a way of getting kids involved in the whole process of our garden is full of resources and beauty and has different purposes. So you, at different times of the year, you can incorporate, you can even weave stems of grapevines together that you may have cut and make a wreath with them, wrap that long strand of grapevine around a bucket and kind of wind it together. And then you can put all flowers, especially ones that dry well, like yarrow, you can put that in, or even lavender. And you can have just a dry flower wreath that you're making. So great ways of incorporating textures and colors and projects that kids love.
You know, Judy, my sister's on here, and I just, when I think about this, I think very fondly of the fact that she would make chains of clover flowers and dandelion. Do you remember that? I know you know that, Dolores.
Oh, I do it for my granddaughters.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that's really nice.
Oh,
Yeah, it's always nice when you get one with a really long stem.
Yeah.
Because then you can really work with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great that you're still doing that, because I still remember that too.
Yeah. Really long. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Well, if you want to be really ambitious, Judy, we've got the sunflower house here. You want to talk about that?
Oh my goodness. And the sunflower house, there are many ways of doing a sunflower house, but basically what this allows you to do if you plant a sunflower house is it produces a shade structure. So in order to do this, you can mark out an area on the ground, making sure that it's at least 8 feet across, because sunflowers get big. And I would encourage you to use some of the taller varieties of sunflower seeds. They should be planted right now. They need a long season of growing. So plant sunflower seeds in early May. So you're going to make a trench along the perimeter, the outside of that 8-foot area. Dig down a foot, dig in compost. And then you're going to plant seeds 6 inches apart and 1 inch deep. Now, what I like to do is.
Sorry. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and keep talking.
Okay. So as the sunflowers are coming up, I will do something else. I'll make it even more colorful. And right around the sunflowers, I will plant 1 red runner bean around every 3 or 4 sunflowers, or a couple of blue morning glories. That produces a little bit of extra color. So as those sunflowers grow, right before they're flowering, this is when the adults come in and tie the heads together at the top to make a roof. And this produces this wonderful tunnel of living growth where you just can't, you can put a blanket down, or you can put tree stumps in there for the kids to sit in. This is a wonderful hideaway place for having lunches and doing journaling activities or artwork. A great shade structure, a living shade structure. So I'd like you to encourage it to do so. I'd like you to encourage you guys to undertake some iteration of this with sunflowers and another vine.
We've been talking a lot about restorative spaces. Rosa attended our workshop at the school summit with Nathan Larson, who is out in Wisconsin, and he does he's studying a lot on this, and just how, the notion of a place where there's cover is a restorative place, because it's a place where you feel enclosed, you feel, this sense of hidden safety. All those things get conjured up in a space like this. So what a fun way, who doesn't like to have like a tent in your bedroom and stuff like that, but this is a, nature's tent.
It's also, it's that secret magical place.
Right.
That's just for kids.
Just for kids,
And, remember to leave an opening. So don't have the whole leave an opening so the kids can go in.
That's it. That's key. Okay, we're going to stop just for a moment and see if there's any questions from anybody about anything we talked about, any of the books or any of the recipes or activities, anything about pollination. Type in the chat or come on the mic. Anybody have any questions? And if you don't, that's fine. We can just move on. I just want to have a place for people to ask their questions. Going once, going twice. I tell you what, I'm going to move to the next slide, but we'll stop if anybody wants to type in the chat here. Oh, we got this book. Okay, this is our last book that we're talking about, Barefoot Book of Earth Tales, by Don Casey and Ann Wilson. These are tales from all around the world. And what I love about this book, and Judy, I'll give you a moment of time too, is these stories are from, you know, just different cultures. And then after that, there's an activity that goes with each of the stories. And they're all, you know, related to the earth. Judy, do you have any favorites or anything, how you've used this book in the past?
This is a book that celebrates the wonders of growing across the world and cooking across the world. Sometimes it teaches us many important lessons, like sharing, not being greedy, with the perspective of the indigenous culture. So I think the one that you've chosen, I'm not going to tell people, is very appropriate. And again, like so many of the books that we're talking about, it's not only appropriate for young kids, but I review this at different stages of growth of my own. I use this in my own kids when they were growing up. The idea of utilizing folk tales from around the world to teach lessons about life, about growing, about sharing, about being together, about giving back is something that I think we can never have too much at any stage in our life.
Well said. So here's a story from Nigeria, Why the Sky is Far Away. These are, you know, they're picture books, but they're longer stories. So it's the kind of, you know, if you have younger kids, this is something you'd read aloud to them. But this one is from Nigeria. And basically how the story goes is that the sky provided everything and had a bountiful amount of gifts, including food back in the day. So, but the agreement was that the sky would provide you with food, but you had to make sure that you only got what you needed. So Osato is this woman who enjoyed eating food from the sky, but she got a little exuberant about eating. As you can see here, she just loves to grab all these foods from the sky. You can see there's pineapples and watermelon and everything like that. She's making a soup here, and she stops to eat. Well, she got her fill, and she said, oh, what would it hurt? I just have one more bite. I'm just going to take one more bite. Well, that one more bite made her just go crazy. And she's like, oh, I got to have more. So she grabbed a big chunk of the sky, and she realized, oh, the sky's not going to be happy with me if I just waste all this food. So I've got to get my husband to eat the food. I've got to get my kids to eat the food. Well, they filled themselves up so much that they couldn't eat all the food. And Osata said, well, we didn't eat all the food, but what would a little bit of waste what harm would that do? Well, the sky was not happy, as you can see. And she worried and worried, and the sky was in darkness. And she began to cry because she realized that she had done something, you know, that was just not in her best interest. So she cried and cried and cried. And the sky said, well, we're going to take the food away. And she said, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to eat? And the sky said, well, we'll teach you how to grow your own food.
Yeah.
But you'll have to grow your food in a way that you grow enough just for, you know, that is just enough for you to eat. So that was the lesson in the story. And the activity that goes with it is the anything goes soup. So basically, go ahead, Judy. What were you going to say?
No, the only other thing that I wanted to say about Osato, it's a life lesson. It's not just for young children, it's for all of us. How important it is to not plant more than we can eat. How really it's more than waste. It's a life lesson about sharing, about the earth will provide, about not abusing the earth. So I think it's got many lessons that at different stages of life, it's very appropriate to share with the kids. And then, as Rob was saying, that this recipe is so wonderful that goes along with it because it doesn't prescribe anything specific. Just like Paula was mentioning, you can use pea shoots in that salsa verde, but you could use anything else. So this allows you to be creative and use what you have growing at different times with your children. It's a very simple recipe. It's a way of also naming the vegetables that you're using, maybe even introducing what parts of the plant are you using, finding out what favorite flavors they have, and then whatever, it's liquid, it's tomatoes, it's herbs, it's a little seasoning.
Yeah.
Really, really simple.
Yeah, and it allows for that experimenting too. It's like, oh, we've got this left over. I wonder how this is going to taste if we put it in there. So encourages that experimentation and cooking, and of course finishing it off with a nice a piece of crusty bread with grated Parmesan. So a nice
That's better than that.
finish that. Yeah, very good. So like I said, each of the stories, the folk tales, has an activity. This one just happened to have a recipe, but there's other activities for different stories. Well, we have seen a lot of activities. I'm going to put a poll up for you to choose the ones that you want to do the most. This always helps us to get a sense of what is most popular. I ran out of space actually, because apparently you can't put more than, I don't know how many I have here. So Sunflower House, the Barefoot book, and the Anything Goes recipe didn't get on here. But if you want to choose the ones that you like the most, put your choices in here, and we'll wait for a few more people to put in their responses. Okay. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to stop the poll here. So it looks like the most popular ones for the moment, that is, flower handprints. That's an easy, nice one. Butterfly Park. People like Butterfly Park. I do too. Backweed jewelry activity. The Little Gardener is popular. And the Book of Gardening Projects. Very nice. Oh, I didn't share the results. There we go. Well, you get the point. All right. I'm going to, if you want to stay for a little bit, let me go through this really quickly. We're going to have our drawing for all 4 of these books, but I'm going to send you a link for the survey. I'll send that up as follow-up. I wanted to, this is the last one we're going to do for a while, but we've now have a nice collection of video and webinar segments. I'll send this in an email as a list of things that you can access on our YouTube channel. So I do want to thank you. And what I want to do is, now I wanted to do this each time we've done a drawing, but now I'm finally, I think I'm going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this prize wheel together. And those of you that are eligible, we're not eligible, so we can't be part of the drawing. I'm going to put your names on here. So stay with me long enough. Actually, I'm going to stop the recording so we don't have to worry about that. So we'll stop the recording here.